Horse racing, an ancient sport whose history hides mad scientists, drugs, and the beginning of NASCAR. Historians have left some gaps, which I will take the liberty of filling in. Everything that you thought you knew about horse racing was wrong, and the truth will shock you. This is the incorrect history of horse racing. Horse racing started as chariot racing in the Greek Olympics and the Roman Circus Maximus. Eventually, there was a shift to racing and riding rather than chariots. This happened when the royal pheasant of Emperor Caesar's beloved daughter Rosacea was killed by a piece of flying chariot debris. That's where we draw the line. Harm to pheasants. Not peasant, but we draw the line at harm to fowl. And that's actually where we get the term foul in modern sports. And the lack of observance of violence from referees. It's tradition. Thoroughbred horses can be traced back to Arabians imported to Britain in the late 17th century by wealthy men who wanted faster and more athletic horses. But historians leave out some very important details. One of the imported sires was Godolphin Arabian. He was shipped to England from France by Viscount Edward Coke. Coke. That last name will raise the eyebrows of thoroughbred owners everywhere, wondering if this man was directly responsible for the crack-headedness of their horses. Whether or not Edward Coke gave this forbidden snow to his horses is up for debate, but as a thoroughbred owner myself, the theory checks out. Just take a look at this portrait of his horse and decide for yourself. Fast horses win wars, and thus armies wanted faster horses than their neighbors. Owners would get together to flaunt their superior modes of transportation, like a medieval cars and coffee. King James I of England was an avid follower of horse racing. He is said to have become so entangled with the sport that he lost track of his duties as king. However, after a brief study of various British rulers, you may wonder what atrocity James could have committed in comparison. James was separated from his mother at 1 year old, his father already being dead. He promptly became king of Scotland. I personally wouldn't blame a 1-year-old monarch for being more enraptured with horses than legislature, but what do I know? What I am certain of is that James nearly doubled the debt left by his predecessor. And it's not difficult for me to imagine what he might have spent this money on. Horse girl math will certainly put you in debt, especially once you're at the point of buying racehorses and racetracks. Still, spending money that his country doesn't have seems like a staple of world leaders throughout history. I think that James was onto something that his successors would later utilize. The sport's popularity continued to grow among aristocrats, and it was eventually called the sport of kings. But why racing? Racing and royalty have gone hand in hand for centuries. The King's Plate races were introduced by Charles II, and the first known races where winners were awarded prizes. Other than boosting the morale of the public and increasing income that could be taxed, the benefit of racing doesn't seem large enough to warrant the interest and sponsorship of the crown. But if you dig a bit deeper, the sinister truth reveals itself. The first race of Charles II's reign took place in 1661. June 5th of that same year, a little-known scientist was admitted to Trinity College. The name he gave the college was Isaac Newton, but his real name was Dr. Doofenshmirtz II. Charles II and Doofenshmirtz II were close friends, and this led to Charles allowing Doofenshmirtz to experiment on his people. And what better place to experiment and gather large groups of people than a horse race? Racetracks were built with machines hidden under the stands and in the stables. They harnessed the sounds of people cheering, the bright colors that they wore, the seismic activity from the thundering of the horses' hooves. An interesting fact, This is where the weight regulations for jockeys came into play. It was discovered that if the jockeys weighed over 120 pounds, the equipment would break. These incidents led to several fires and an earthquake before regulations were put into place. Horse racing has been in America since colonial times, becoming slowly more popular over time. During the 1900s, horse racing had a lot of ups and downs. At the beginning of the Great Depression, a few states decided to legalize betting on horse races as a way to stimulate the economy. When World War II ended, racing wasn't very popular, and the wane lasted until the 1970s. It was looking bleak for the sport until Lewis Clark Jr., grandson of William Clark, half of the explorer duo Lewis and Clark, started the Kentucky Derby. He did so with the help of his wife, a woman named Julep. After the race started gaining traction, Clark was bringing his wife a gift of a blanket of roses when he stumbled into the winner of the race. Rather than rescind the perceived gift, Clark's rose blanket became a tradition, and he named the official drink of the Derby after his wife, a mint julep. Around this time, a group of brothers, Nathan, Andrew, and Stephen, also known as the Nass brothers, sought to steal the spotlight from horse racing to launch a car racing circuit. Together, they put all of their resources into creating an anti-gambling sentiment with the American populace. And they were quite successful for a while. Every year, horse racing brings the United States economy $36 billion. The American leaders at the time saw how damaging the loss of this could be, and they knew they needed to do something about it. They thought up the Triple Crown and paid papers across the nation to write articles praising the winners. This led to another boom in racing, which has continued to last until modern times, and was accidentally brought about by the interference of the Nass brothers. These brothers went on to be successful in their own right, starting the NASCAR races, which you probably haven't heard of. Horse racing began gaining popularity again as horses won the Triple Crown races, but none launched the sport back into the limelight like Secretariat. The sport very well may have died if it wasn't for the big red freak of nature whose heart was twice the size of an average horse. But the timing of Secretariat's rise to fame warrants some serious questioning. Was the horse given steroids? Were the races staged? No, but you would be right to question his racing prowess. Secretariat was called a tremendous machine, and that couldn't be closer to the truth. The grubby hands of Dr. Doofenshmirtz VIII were all over this mysterious victory, in perhaps the only successful secret plan in all of the Doofenshmirtz legacy. Further, the doctor is said to have immediately retired after this feat. Blueprints and templates for a platypus-killing horse machine can be found in their family archive. Any questioning officials that got too close to the truth were swiftly reminded that without Secretariat, racing would have been forgotten, and their jobs along with it. And so, the secret of Secretariat has remained safe until today. If you have questions, don't Google it. Just trust me. Thank you for joining me in the incorrect history of horse racing. If you'd like another history lesson, comment below and tell me what you'd like to learn more about.